this is a special edition. There's been recently an IGFA record that has been said to be broken. And it's caused a significant amount of controversy. This was done on the Holston River. And I called a friend of mine who's been on the call before, Jason McReynolds. Jason, you're at Flying Soho on Instagram. I'm
Yes,
at
sir.
Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. If you guys want to reach us, go for it. What I really wanted to do was educate everyone I can on understanding IGFA rules. And this is an extremely difficult subject to cover because of a couple of things. One, they're tough to describe. There's a number of different rules, general rules, conservation points, et cetera, that I think are important. Then you stack on top of that a couple things. Emotion is a huge one. Everybody gets emotional about big fish, including people who weren't even involved, right? Two, you have livelihoods at stake with records being broken and people relying on them for their businesses, et cetera. So it's extremely important to get that right. The third is past owners of records and competitors, right? So there's an element of that we, I think, need to keep in consideration. So, Jason, I reached out to you and said, Jason, I heard about this record, man. Wow, that's pretty cool. I know you've had some past records in the area, like the Holston's blowing up. What a crazy fishery. Tell me a little bit about it. And you said to me, that's really odd because I just got called by the IGFA. And I was like, you gotta be bleeping kidding me, really, And you said, yeah, I know the person, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe kind of tune us a little bit in. And before we even do that, and I know you're in agreement, the fish that was caught, a flipping amazing fish. The way that it was caught, absolutely amazing. The things that were done to set the record, per se, in their scenario, to get it weighed, to keep it healthy, to release it, amazing effort. Do I agree with all of them? No. Do I see areas where we can make significant improvement? Yes. Do I understand why the angler did that? Absolutely. If I caught a monster fish and I knew it was an IGFA record, I would probably emotionally try to do some of those things. Some of them, I would personally draw the line because I feel like I have enough education or know-how in those areas that I'd be really concerned. So I want to set that straight. And Jason, can you kind of give your synopsis on that same kind of element as well?
I agree with pretty much everything you said. I mean, the fish, the girth was like 26 inches, and that's incredible. It was
Yeah.
caught on like 5X, which is the current. I fished there probably more than anybody else, and just the current alone. So when I first started fishing for them, we were novice, didn't really know what we were doing. 0X. We broke them off on 0X like it was nothing. So for somebody to land a hybrid on 5 or 6X,
At that size. And what was the size is said to be, I think, like almost 30 inches, right?
correct. IGFA saying 26 and the girth was 26, but the guy that caught it was like 29, 30, I think. 30, I think, honestly.
Oh, wow.
Even at that, yes, it was an incredible fish. I've caught
Yeah.
a lot of hybrids, and it was a very good fish.
Yeah. And the guy's an incredible angler. I mean, right? I think if you could do that and land a fish at that size and weight with that type of tippet from an angling standpoint, like that's an incredible feat. But there's differences. We're gonna talk about differences. So I might be setting you up for disaster on response on that.
No, I'm gonna come back with your guide. So your guide is, if you listen to your guide, you'll
do
within
well.
reason you're gonna be okay. And I do have to say his guide was a very incredible guide.
Yeah.
That's what he does. That's his game.
Hmm. Very cool. Very cool. Well, let's do this. Let's talk a little bit. I'm going to talk about the journalism side of this on the forefront and on the back end, because what I found was that this fish was caught before IFGA declared it as a record. It was declared as a record and publicized. And it seemed like there was a lot of homework that could have been done very easily, especially because I was running into it in social media and through friends
Mm-hmm.
before that publication could have came out as this has been done. In fact, I left a message on one of them of, hey, this is an awesome catch. Congratulations. By the way, it sounds like there may be some things wrong with the rules, etc., to count this as a record. So just be aware. And they deleted it. They deleted the message, which I thought was like, seriously. I mean, I'm helping you out. I'm being courteous. Like, so long story short, I just want to set it straight of like, hey, if you're setting records for IGFA, until you see IFGA make a public announcement, like, don't count it as a record. Still keep fishing.
Right. I have four. I've held four records, and every record I ever had, I'm pretty bad because I really don't promote myself a lot off of it, which I should, because, like I said, I held the world's record brown trout twice. Um, we broke it. It was tied. We re-broke it, and yeah, I typically I let IGFA do all that because we had one disqualified over a pitcher that wasn't clear enough, and that's just the way the ball falls. And it
Yeah.
was an incredible fish. Like, we'll catch it again, but it might not be 2 years. But yeah, we'll get it again
Yeah.
because that's all we
Yeah.
do is chase big fish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I just want to kind of set the ball straight, I guess, on that one with like, look, unfortunately, these days you can't believe everything you read.
Well,
And journalism has, for a lot of these places, taken a bit of a fall because people were so interested in getting the first read, the first
right,
information out. And I mean, you're talking minutes, it's the seconds sometimes, right?
right,
The guy standing in the shore going, click, oh, we just beat an IFGA record. It's so sick, and you're like,
yep,
dude, I get it. It's totally sick, but it's not certified yet. So it's not beating
correct,
the record. It's an IGF potential record holder. So
correct,
just changing the nomenclature sometimes is really important. Before we go way down that road, etc., the record was on what they call white rock bass by IGFA, which is often called a hybrid
yep,
striper, or some people call them wipers, etc. But we're talking about IFGA in general. So this is applicable to, all freshwater. Let's say freshwater. How's that?
right, right,
So we'll talk, whether it's bass, trout, et cetera, et cetera. These are some general rules. Now, I will say, rules may change between species or types or whatever. There may be some slight iterations, but for the most part, for freshwater, here are some of the rules. We're going to talk about that and the importance of that. And then if you are looking to be a record holder, Go spend some time on IGFA's website. All the information is there. If you have questions, contact them.
Right.
They will gladly call you back and talk to you directly and answer questions.
A
Okay?
matter of fact, Zach, the guy over the records, I've never met him, but it's really crazy because we're friends. Like I said, he was talking to me the other day. He was talking about he went to Pennsylvania, um, fished the Lehigh, and I'm like, man, I fished the Lehigh, and it's it's sort of funny how much we really got in common, but yet I've never met him, but he's very nice, and just the knowledge that he's put into
Got.
me, yes, is very incredible. I mean, and I didn't even know anything about. I knew Tippet Records, and the way I really was introduced to it was Ken Tanaka.
Mm,
And between you and me, that's probably the best thing because the one thing Ken taught me was by the book. He knew every detail of. I mean,
yeah.
I was just watching him set his leader up, and I was just like, dude,
What are you
it's got to
doing?
be
You're
that.
like,
Yeah,
he's
that
like, I'm getting it right,
specific.
man. Yeah.
Oh, not to not. He knew every every detail about it, and he got his. That's another thing. He's the first record I ever guided, and it was the White Rock Bass.
Hmm. And then it
So,
was broken, and then this is said to be breaking that one, isn't that correct?
so I'm not sure how many times it was broken between us holding it, because once they're broke, I couldn't even tell you. I
Yeah.
held the White Rock, I held the Striper, and I held the Brown Trout, and I don't know how many times the striper's been broken, and I do not know how many times the brown trout's been broken. I knew that when it was tied, I looked at it and I was like, you know what? Even though we still held it because you can tie it, but the current holder keeps the record just because
Right.
of the way the rules go, which is fair. Um, and I was like, we got to re-break it. But after that, I'd really forgotten about IGFA records until
Yeah.
the guide called me and was like, dude, we caught this fish. And he was like, it's the new world record. And I was just like, once we started talking, I sort of knew it really didn't stand a chance, but I'm friends with, I'm acquaintances with all these people and friends with the guide. So I wasn't going to tell him
Yeah.
that because, you know, it's just
You don't
letting
want to
him
hurt his feelings. He's let him live his stoke, right?
correct. But once he told me, like, the fly situation and the whole situation of it, I was just like, you probably killed a fish for no reason, but that
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
fish did swim off in the video, though.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit. So, general rules. Maybe we just talk about some general rules with IGFA so that people can understand. Like, look, I think the first general rule I would say is you got to follow the rules, and there's a lot of them, right?
Yes,
So maybe
there's
walk through some of those.
so depending on the two records that I go after, um, well, technically, I've never went after a tippet class record. Ken wanted me to. He was going to, but the current, like I said, I felt was just you have to fight them too long and too hard, and I feel like it's not my thing. Perfectly legal, so I go after all length records. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Oh, we got a little mute issue here.
okay, the key to all of it is on the all length. It's up to 20-pound test. But it's got to be IGFA certified, so you just can't go buy Cigar Red. You
Mm,
can, but you have to send it to them to
to be
make sure
tested.
it's, yes, true to break strength. Um, or IGFA's, the Cortland. That's what I use because it's
True to break.
IGFA and it is
Yeah.
true to break. So, um,
So, and I want to spread on that. So, there's no governing source for break strength. Those are independently tested by the provider, the manufacturer.
correct,
Right. So,
correct,
what IGFA is saying, that's fantastic. I don't really trust the manufacturer, frankly. And you
correct,
need to send me your tippet, or it has to have an IGFA certification on the tippet, which Cortland does have.
correct.
So it meets the standards. So that's number one. So we didn't even start. We went to
Yes.
tippet. There's already discrepancies capable there. So are you starting to see at a very early stage the complexity of setting a record is much higher than you think, right?
Oh,
It's not
yes.
just like you but dream as a kid of I went out and caught a 75-inch pike and I set the world record. Like that's not it. It's different, right? That's a
Yes.
different type of record.
Yep.
So go ahead.
So then, like your your minimum of that has to be 15 inches. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the minimum. On your length records, um, you know, you can run your whole leader 20. That's what I do. I just run. Um, actually, I use typically I'll use 16-pound, even though it is certified true, because I mean if it's like 2.2 pound, I think 2.2 pounds will disqualify it if its pull strength is 2.2.
Mm,
So now if it's like or 20.2, um, now if it's 19.8, you're good. But
mm-hmm.
I think it's point 0.2 over, it disqualifies it.
Okay. So you take the extra step of like, hey, I want to make sure I'm within the limits, right?
120% just because what you put into it.
Yeah, you put a lot of work into it,
Yes, sir.
and there are benefits and disadvantages to both. So in tippet length. So let's think about it this way. Um, say you were fishing a lighter class than um, the 16 pound, right? The
Right.
20 pound total, right? You could run a longer piece of tippet, which would give you more strength or more stretch potential in potentially more strength because of
Right.
the break, right? However, you run into abrasion issues over more length. So there's a formula that you want to decide on that meets the standards and regulations, but also gives you the optimal opportunity. Now, if you're fishing in open water where there isn't a lot of debris and et cetera, you may go longer. If you're
Right.
fishing water where it's really tight, you may say, I'm going to stick to that very strict 15 inches. I'm going to go 15 and a
Yes.
quarter just to be safe, but that's it.
Right.
So you have to take all of those into consideration, and you really have to think about a conservative record breaker. I am a
Right.
conservative angler in the stance that I want to meet all the rules, but I'm a record breaker in that I'm going to push all the elements to catch the right fish. And that changes your mentality. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So let's go on to the kind of next general rule.
So your bump board has to be an IGFA bump board. That is the only bump board they'll take. It has to be their bump board.
Now,
You
their
have to
bump
buy.
boards, describe their bump boards.
So it's white and it's rolling. It's a roll up. It's real
Roll
soft.
up.
It's
Yep.
and it's really good for the fish. The pain about it is it's in centimeters. I hate that. Um.
Uh,
So
it's in metric, not imperial. All right. So that's
yeah.
the pain. But it's roll up. So
Yep.
that's key. And I
And
think that
And
adds another element, right? Like people carry bump boards on their boat, or they have a sticker with a ruler on it, or they have a roller on their cooler or whatever, and
right.
they start to use those types. You're disqualified.
Oh,
Period.
120%.
And any of these things, it's like if you do them, game over.
Correct.
Okay. So your bump board is not IFGA. Game over. You're not a record holder. And I want to talk to the point of, come on, it's a ruler. Well, go measure the ruler on his boat and see if it's accurate. I'm
That's
sorry, but the guy before him that holds the record had to carry an IFGA bump board.
yep.
That was his rule. So if you're going to change the rules, you can't change it mid-form. I think you and I talked about dirt bike riding. You had some examples. So it was the Carmichael example. Give me an example, like some of the best riders out there.
Well, I mean, like Carmichael and James Bubba Stewart are arguably your two best probably riders ever. Even though Jeremy McGrath's got 70
Yeah,
wins, but they've got undefeated seasons. And James Bubba Stewart, who I think I met him, I met them all,
and he
and
had to retire early
yeah, he
because of this.
retired early because he didn't have his prescription for a medication they tested him years before with, and he
Right.
got banned
Every race they get
every
tested.
time he not only won but podium. They tested him and they know what he has, and he didn't have the prescription at the last time he won a race, and he he got banned for 2 years, and that ended his career. And
Yeah.
he's probably the best ever.
Yeah. And who knows where he would have been after that, right?
Oh,
I mean, you got to assume high. But I think that's a great example of like, there are rules in place to keep a standard.
correct.
And the standard is all encompassing. It's encompassing of mentality, program, approach, materials, gear, angle. I mean, like you just go down the list. Like they try to keep it as succinct and in alignment as possible as IGFA so that it's always the same consideration. And then the last thing I'll throw in there, and maybe we talk about this a little bit more, is IGFA record holders are as much of a record as they are documentation. They're
Correct.
certified documentation.
Yes, they
Okay,
are.
so that's important. So I'm going to jump back. We're going to go to the next general rule. So now you have tippet strength, tippet length, bump board. What's next?
Photographs, like you have to have a photograph of the fish's snout against the bump board. Then you have to have your overall fish the same way against the bump board. And then you have to have its tail, and they do it by the inner V of the
Okay.
tail. And they have to have all three of those, and they have to be identical. Like, you can't
Yeah, you
take a
can't
picture,
shift it, move it.
yeah, yeah. So it
And
has to
don't
be.
you need a photo of you with the rod as well, correct? In the fish.
Yes, yes, you have to have a photo of you. You can do it with you holding the fish and the rod. Um, I think I do grip and grins every day, but I don't typically do them with the rod because by the time you get the rod and you're doing this, I
It's
just
one more
make sure
thing.
the rod was in the picture, and
Yeah.
that was the main thing there.
Yeah. Okay.
And now, if you're going after the tippet records, you have to be on planet Earth. You can be in the river, whatever, but 2 feet has to be on planet Earth as opposed to your all length records. You can take the picture on the boat. And I think that's another place where that record failed was I think it's classified now as a tippet record, and it's
Yeah.
because it was disqualified from the all length
Yeah.
record.
If you're standing in the boat or on a float tube or
It
whatever,
disqualifies.
you're not. Yeah, you're not in.
Correct.
And they're heartbreakers. These are heartbreakers, guys.
Oh,
You
I
miss
agree.
one of these things, it's an absolute heartbreaker. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but it's an absolute heartbreaker. Especially if you have a fish that you truly feel is a breaker,
Oh,
a
that
record breaker. I
it
mean,
was yes, it was an incredible fish. Um, and the guy that caught it catches them a lot. He catches them in the lake a lot. This was his first one on a fly rod. I think that was, plus it was on 5X. So again, you have to give it up to him and the guide. Um, and I think it was the first one that the guide had ever got also.
yeah,
He's more of a trout guy. So and for if
probably
my
saved his
memory,
butt fighting that fish. Because
oh,
you know, stripers, a lot of times you're used to heavier gear. Well, he didn't know what it was until it got to the boat or came up, and
correct.
that's yeah, it really saved his tail. I would think.
They didn't really know what it was. If you watch the video, they were sort of debating on what it was
Yeah,
um, in the net. I mean, I knew what it was, um, but I catch them all the time, um, and I guess you could mistake it for a striper, but their shoulders aren't as broad,
mm-hmm.
and their breaks in their lines aren't nothing like that. This fish
Yeah,
was so fat.
yeah, yeah.
So
And some of those things, like you said, if you're not a regular, hard to discern. And I think a lot of the reason it's hard to discern is you're catching fish that are in a, I don't know if this is even a word, but a dysmorphic manner, right? They've gone through dysmorphia. They're overly large in areas that they normally wouldn't be, and yeah,
yeah,
is that throwing things on like you? And on top of that, we talked about earlier, emotion. I mean, you're seeing things that you never thought you would ever see. Like, just go down the list, right?
right,
Your adrenaline's through the roof. Like, yeah, I might not be able to identify a rainbow from a brown if I caught a
right,
massive fish at times, right?
yes,
You know, you're
yes,
breathing heavy. I mean, it's like you go and go and go. So,
yes.
you know, all things said, like, let's always keep that into consideration. But that's not what we're here for today. We're here to really understand some of the rules and regulations of IGFA and why they're so important. One, and two, how to set yourself up for success. If you want to go chase IGFA records, you got to follow the rules. Everybody
120%.
does. And I'm in full agreement with that. You can't bend me on that. It's a known entity. It's publicized. Here's the rule book. Read it, follow it. I don't go into a football game or a baseball game or a golf tournament as a pro wanting to set records and not understanding that fully. And if I didn't understand it fully and somebody called me out on something, I sure as hell wouldn't claim a record.
I
I mean,
agree.
I'm getting emotional about it because
Yeah.
it drives me nuts when people say, well, can't we just do a handicap?
Yes. Yes.
I saw
Which
that
of
on
course,
social media.
yes, I started to say now. The yes, some of the comments on yes, I actually read the one you're talking about where they're like, yeah, I've held records, so it when mine was tied, I felt like it wasn't fair because it was caught in private water and it was a stocked fish, and I caught a
Mm,
wild fish. And I mean, the rules are the rules, so I get it 120%, but trying to catch a wild fish versus something caught in private water where it was stocked the day before, that's to me, it's a little different, but it's rules. So it was caught fair. Um,
yeah, I
how do
got to
you
live
feel
with that.
about that? Or how do you
I,
feel about, because you catch
I,
wild fish.
yeah, and I got to live with that, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it. Is I got to live with that. If
Yeah.
I'm trying to set a record, here are the rules,
Yeah.
because it's not like you are held to setting a record. You're not held to that. You don't
Correct.
have to turn it into IGFA. You don't have to pursue that. You don't have to measure that. You don't have to take the photos. You could just let that thing go and live in your brain and say, you know what? I'm a record holder. I
Correct.
kicked ass today and I caught this fish. But you're now, by submitting, saying, I want to be part of your process. And if you're saying, I want to be part of your process, then you don't change their rules.
You can't. You definitely can't.
That's
Like,
what you don't do. You're not part of their process anymore. You're making
right,
up your own tournament. You're making up your
right.
own record, et cetera, et cetera. We're talking IGFA
I,
records.
and
Go
there
online.
are,
Go look it up. It's all
yeah,
right there.
and there are other like records you can go after. The IGFA I think are more of a standard. It's just it's equal. They make it so equal that you have like you have to cut your leader at your perfection loop and or your loop if you're using an already pre-bought leader, and you have to
Yeah.
cut it there, and you have to send the whole thing in. Um, you know, so cheating or it's almost impossible. As far as that would go, because they have to have your line, they have to have you can't use scents, which of course I fly fish, so I don't use scents or anything like that. But
Yeah, don't
you
go
know,
out at the night before and soak your bait or all your flies in crawfish juice. That's not fair. I mean, come on,
correct.
right? Like,
So
but
there,
I get it, and I think
yeah,
the cool thing that you mentioned right there, Jason, was IGFA is really considered the standard. Well, the
yes,
reason they're considered the standard is because the way they uphold their rules and
yes,
regulations. It's very standardized. It's complete. It's well thought out. It's this is the way it is, or you're out. There's other records for sure.
there, yes,
And you know what? I mean, holding a record is amazing. I
it
mean, it's
is.
incredible. It's a feat in itself. As an angler, I would suggest that you get okay with not holding a record. That's an
That's good.
icing on the cake.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going to beat the hell out of yourself emotionally.
Well, so that's another thing. So like, it's really funny because the morning we broke um our striper record, we actually called Zach that morning to get everything, all our ducks in a row, because you get a little nervous,
Oh
and
yeah,
once you put that bump board and you have your leaders already made up, like you said, so the the abrasive part, anything IGFA certified is, I mean, if you look at it wrong, it's gonna break. It's crazy.
hmm.
We Douglas came down here, and we actually were going after another hybrid record, and they were filming, and she got a fish on, and we had 20-pound test, and what it did to, I mean, it literally was gone in an instant, and the filmer, he's like, he's like, I go everywhere and I film people catching fish, and he's like, I've never seen a fish, freshwater fish, do that to a fly rod, because I mean, it was peeling the line off and the rod was bent and it snapped it like crazy. And I'm like, it's just so, it's non abrasive. It just, the
It's pure
first,
power. Yeah.
yes, it's just, it's, they're, the teeth hit it or anything like that and it's gone. And there's a way you can prevent that. So, like, it's legal to actually use 12 inches of anything you want, but it can only be up to um, 12 pound as your bite guard. So that wouldn't really help us any
So you
because
could tie, yeah, you could tie on a
just as
bike
long
guard.
as it's not
Yeah,
wire. You could use like Seagar, you could use Rio, Scientific Angler,
yeah,
um, any brand that you want. Spider wire, I think, is a fishing line. I don't get into much like
yeah.
non-fishing stuff, fly fishing stuff, but now I do Seagar. That's if unless I'm going for world records, Seagar is my go-to. But from here on out, I think every time I fish, I'm gonna have IGFA certified on there just because this record or this record that was pending record, it never really was a pending record because it wasn't done right. But this fish sort of opened my eyes of the attention and the publicity that you can get for your guide service, and I've never capitalized on that. I've never tried to really
Mm,
capitalize on it. And let's just be honest. I mean, that was a hybrid. I've got two world record brown trouts on the fly, and that's the pinnacle of what I do. And so yeah, I'm gonna try to capitalize on my guide service as far as, hey, we catch record fish, and
yeah,
because there's a
yeah.
market
Try
for
and
it
get
apparently.
after it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's
Soon enough you'll
obviously a
be tying
market,
the Slim Beauty and slapping on 12 inches of bike guard, right? I mean,
right? I mean, it's
this
the
is your livelihood. That's the other thing,
yes that
right? A lot of these record holders, they utilize these records for their livelihood,
yes
for their business.
that was my one
And if that
mistake.
changes the rules, that is not a fair playing field, right?
Well, yeah,
Then all of a sudden it disqualifies that record as sometimes proof of like, hey, this guy's a record holder. I mean, this guy's a top angler guide. I mean, whatever. It does and it doesn't, right? Like for some people
right.
it may, some people it might not. But I'll tell you right, this guy that just recently did it, I bet you his business is booming right now.
Oh,
He's gotten into how many articles, how many magazines, social media. I bet you people were calling him left and right, going, "Hey, I want to book this month or next year."
and see
And
that's
rightfully so. He did an incredible job.
and that's where I failed in mine. So like, and it's sort of just like you said. So Ken Tanaka um, would actually come here to chase records, and like I said, he he set a world record, and with me, and he's the one that really got me into it. So there's a market for that also for people to come um, and get records like stripers. As far as river goes on the fly right now, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, our old world record was only 36 inches, and we were sort of embarrassed to submit it because we catch 44-inch striper on the fly rod quite a bit. They come out of the lakes and run up into our rivers, and
Yeah.
the hybrid's the same way. I mean, I've got a 33-inch hybrid, and that's a big fish. That is a incredible hybrid.
Right.
So, and the brown trout. I mean, our brown trout, like, and that was good for our area if I would have publicized it a little better or tried to, because at this, I mean, it's funny because people are like, oh, a 27 and like 3/4 inch brown trout's not a world record trout. And I'm like, according to IGFA all length records, it is. But that's a massive trout.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's nothing to laugh at. And then it's
No.
like you were talking about on social media. So people were saying, "Oh, we catch those all day long." Well, that's fine. I'll send you an
Uh,
IGFA certified
Later.
bump board, tippets, and I'll pay for your submission if you can do it within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, thank you." And I'm like, That changes everything.
It does. That's a huge point, right?
Yes.
All of a sudden, I'm going out as a record holder. I'm not going out as a bycatch scenario. I lucked into, and
Right.
some of it's luck, some of it isn't. I get it. You're a good angler. Some of it's luck, some of it isn't.
It's
But
all like,
when you set out in the morning and you say, I'm going to break a record today, I've got everything in place, that's different. There's a lot of pressure on you.
I did it 4 times, and I'm getting
Yeah.
ready to do it. Hopefully, um, we've got our eye on. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm going after the hybrid record. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I'm gonna do it. I won't do it on the tippet side just because the guy that did that, the guy that was over that, he's good at that. I broke him off on 0x, so
Yeah.
that's got to say a lot to land a fish on 5x.
Right.
I'm
Right.
just being honest. I mean,
Yeah.
we literally the first time we got onto him on 0x, it would be like, and it would snap, and I'm just like, holy crap! So I called my best friend, my mentor. His name's Robbie Coates. He's from here. He's the one that really got us into streamers. He's like, dude, start throwing 20 pound. We started catching striper and hybrid like crazy. Um, and
Huh.
he, Robbie Coates did a lot for us in the big fish world. He's a saltwater guide
Yeah.
now in
Yeah.
North Carolina. If you want to go catch fall salt albacore, look him
He's
up.
your guy. Yeah. He's
Yeah,
your guy.
he's yeah. And I think he's gonna actually try to go after a couple of saltwater records. I don't know. I think he's good. I know he's good enough to do it. So, but yeah,
Okay. Well, I'm going to back up because you got into the story and I didn't want to interrupt you. But I made the point that it's a different scenario heading out like that. Do you
yes.
agree with that? I mean,
Oh, the pressure is on. I mean, like lucking into fish is one thing, but when you have your specific number set, it's so hard to. That's the pressure. Because I mean, we catch a lot of 22-inch fish, but it's not every day that you luck into. I mean, she's got like a 33-inch rainbow. I mean, that's a steelhead territory right there.
yeah.
But you just, as a guide, I know where the big fish are, and that's all we fish. I start my jet boat up, that's straight where we go. But it's hard. It's a hard business because I get skunked, and
Mm-hmm.
but I'm honest with
You
my
got to look
client.
someone in the eye at the end of the day that's
Yeah.
paying you money and tipping you.
Oh, I'm honest. I'm like, we can do this. I did this with Russ Madden. I'm like, we can do this one of two ways. We can go catch stock fish all day long, but if you want to go after that unicorn,
Yep.
you're just fishing for a bite that he landed because he's the man.
Yeah.
But if you're not good enough to land that fish, your day's done and you waste a lot of money. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Yep.
the pressure is totally different because like the kid that caught the 800-pound sturgeon out of Boone Lake that was just out there fishing.
Yeah.
Never going to happen again. Never happen
No.
again. But if he would have had
Well, yeah.
IGFA certified tippet and all this stuff, that
That's
would have
like
been
that largest brown on the White River. The largest brown on the White River was caught on uh, marshmallow, flavored
a.
marshmallow.
What
Like
was what was that? How big was that?
I don't even remember. There's a big sign in front of the resort or the lodge. It's a
Right.
massive trout. I mean, it's enormous.
The first.
And I call them gobblers because those
Oh,
guys sit under the cleaning stations and gain fat all day. And it was like it. The guy was like an average Joe, kind of just not going to do anything, just fishing, having fun.
right.
And that one happened to bite the marshmallow that day. you know,
I was
and great for him.
Steve Dolly was talking. I go to Streamer Fest, and
Yeah.
Steve Dolly was talking about that fish, and I actually before, it's really crazy. Before we went and fished the white for the first time, I was watching like Fly Fish Arkansas, and John Holston is actually talking about that specific. And man, I think it's like is it 24 pounds? What he said? It's a
Yeah,
massive,
something insane like that.
insane fish. And people, it's really funny because I had a client. Um, he was talking to me. He's like, "You catch a lot of 30-inch browns, which I do, but hooking that's one thing. Landing a fish of that magnitude,
Yeah, totally
that's
different thing.
another."
Yeah, you look at oh gosh, fly trap and wild trout. They're brothers, Kyle and I can never remember the other guy's name. Um, they're catching fish on the White River. They're catching big fish, and they do it regularly. Those guys are
Yeah,
really good anglers, and people have opinions about them. And say they're really good anglers. But I'll tell you the other thing. Those guys made a video the other day. They took the fish and weighed it on a scale, 19 pounds.
that's a
You
massive.
ain't denying a 19-pound trout.
It's the
You
truth.
got to be one hell of an angler, and you got to be a hell of a guide to put people into that kind of fish on
Yes.
somewhat of a regular basis. 19 pounds may not be regular, but big fish that will rival that on a very regular basis.
Well, that's
I mean, you go watch your channel and your mouth doesn't drop.
right.
From what I've seen, it does two things. It drops and it's like, oh my God, look at these guys. These guys are insane. They're catching monster fish. Or people get offended and they start to point fingers. They start to go, this guy's doing this guy's doing that. And you see it on and on. And, I'm more of the proponent of like, hey, good for you, dude. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. And if you're doing something nefarious, that's on you. It's not on me, but that's an amazing catch. Either way.
Well, that's like so with me. Um, it's really. I've got a friend that's like, dude, you need to offer like spin trips. I don't. The only thing
Yep.
we do is fly fish. I'm a fly fishing guy, and nothing against standard fishing, spin
Yeah.
fishing. Nothing against that. It's just the gratitude I get from. I've got a guide from Michigan. He caught a 29 and a half, basically 3/4 inch brown. He missed it the first time. Dead serious. I rode back up. I'm like, let's let the water rest. He's like, there's no way I'll ever catch that again. He started coming up again. I'm like, dude, cast, let it dead drift and set. And he's like, and he landed the fish of a lifetime. He's like, it's the biggest fish I've ever held. And just to do that, he got his biggest striper with me also. And it was the same way. I told him to do something insanely crazy, and he's like, this ain't gonna work. And when the striper chased his fly out of the bait ball, his mouth was like, oh my God. And then it's just like peeling line off, and he's like,
Yeah.
dude, he's like, I mean,
Absolutely insane.
we broke the net trying to land that fish, and he was just like, and we did get it in, and he was like, man, he actually bought the kid that was with us a new net. He was really cool. His name's Rob Kenyon. Really nice guy.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Let's jump back. Let's talk about some of the disqualifications that we identified. I mean, it's obviously anything within the rules, but some common scenarios are going to be you don't have the bump board. Your
Correct.
leader doesn't meet the standardization.
Correct.
The number of hooks, number of hook
Yep.
points.
So yeah. So other than trout, you can only use one in the fly fishing. You can only use one fly. So all my records were caught on articulated flies, which have two hook points, but it's still one fly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But if it's sort of weird because if you use like two flies that have one hook and one hook, that disqualifies it. They have to
Mm,
be in the same fly. Um, so
interesting. Okay.
yeah, if you use two different shad patterns, or if you were to use like this specific catch was
Double
caught
woolly
on.
buggers, whatever. Yeah.
Yep, this one was actually caught on a squirmy wormy, and it was below a shad, and it's disqualified. It's
Oh,
just
and you're talking about the hybrid
yes,
record that what we've been talking about. Okay, so it was a squirmy worm under a
shad patterns.
shad pattern. So two flies and they're out.
And it was an incredible setup. Like the guide, he's got like his formula. It's really
He's
the
set.
yeah, he put so much time into it. He's got it complete. His equation that he came up with on the Soho for like the flow, it's ingenious. He put his time into his setup.
Yeah, good for him, man. And like I said, it's his business. We're not going to give that away, guys. That's his business. Go spend a day with him. Go book
Yeah.
him. You know, go book that guy like you should. If he's a record holder or not, I don't care. He knows his business, right?
Oh, I'm
And he's
just
earned
gonna
it.
yes, I'm just gonna be honest. He's definitely um he's probably I put him in the top 5% in the United States in
Yeah.
guides. He's we're really fortunate on the South Holston. Um, we've got another kid that guides for the South Holston Fly Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and that kid, I've seen him grow from a young kid, a young guy to what he is now. Um, and he is. I put him in the top 5% also. He is they fish totally differently, and man, either one of them we've got so me for instance, I have to give credit to me because I throw streamers. That's all I do. I catch a lot of big
Mm-hmm.
fish and I put a lot of people on. I mean, you got to think, let's just say I put three people on 30-inch browns. How many people in their lifetime hold a 30-inch brown on a fly rod?
Right.
I've got photographic evidence of several people with 30-inch browns. So I I would say I stand out in the streamer game. There's not really many people here. And I'll
Yeah.
name drop John Stunkard. Man, that kid, like I said, he's if I was
Solid.
going to book a trip, I would book him. He's for what he does at the Soho Fly Lodge. That kid catches huge fish on dry fly, streamer. He adapts to if the water rises, you're good. If it drops, you're good. He's adapted. He can adapt to any situation there is.
Hmm.
Um,
He's just got an knack for it, and he's done his homework. I mean,
yes,
like you
and then
said, it's a
Pat.
living, right? I got to become the best at it. And I think you said we're fortunate that we have a lot of good guides around here.
Yes.
But hey, man, iron sharpens iron. You guys are a business against each other, right?
Oh,
You know, like it's a competition in so many ways. Like you hear it, it's like, oh damn it, I got to get another big fish in my boat. Like that guy's coming on strong. Like there's only so many bookings. But at the same standpoint, you have the mentality of there's plenty of bookings to go around.
well,
We're good anglers. We're going to get people.
the main
So it's
reason.
it's juxtaposed.
Well, that's why I just do like streamers. Is just because, um, we've got the guy that caught that hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big nymph guy. Like I said, top 5% in the nation. I mean, he is definitely. Um, you cannot take anything away from him. He has done his homework. He's actually adapted from the Soho to the big waters where I'm catching, the fish I'm catching, because he caught
Yeah,
that fish where I catch most of my fish, and there's not many people that are doing that, or they're trying that, and he's actually
got it
he
down to where he's
yeah oh
figuring it out.
he's definitely got it more than that. He dialed it in years ago, and
Hmm.
so, and then like I said, but there's so many good guides on our. That's the bad thing about it. There's unless you're all of our old timers, um, you know, Patrick, Stunkard, um, if you book with and I can't even believe I'm sitting here saying this, but I mean, if you book with the Soho River Lodge, all their guides, stellar. You're definitely not wasting your money.
Mm-hmm.
If you book with Patrick, you're definitely not wasting your money. Soho River Fly Shop, Matt Champion, my backup guide that guides for them now, Clay Woods.
Yeah.
Man, that kid is amazing. It's just we have the
It,
mentality of you have to put your time in, and it's just
yeah.
that's what we do.
And guiding, I want to clarify too, because I'm a proponent of guiding. I believe in it. And a lot of people believe in guiding, I think, of a couple different things. One is they're putting me on fish. That's the mentality. They're going to get me catching fish. That's one element, if you want it. The other element is they're going to get me the big fish. We're going to hunt for big fish. It's another element. The third, and I think most important element is they're going to teach me.
Yes.
I am going to learn throughout the day. And some guides are really good at that, and some guides are tight to the vest, and some guys are okay. But your ability as an angler to listen and cue in and see the differences that are occurring throughout the day that your guide is helping you do, they don't have to keep it close to the vest. They can keep it
Right.
as close to the vest as they want. But if you can observe that and then translate that into your future endeavors as an angler, it really changes you. And I think to me, that's where the money is. Like, I don't go to a guide typically to catch big fish or, catch a lot of fish. I go to a guide because I want to learn. I want to learn how to fish this typical type of water, this
Right.
scenario, this rigging setup, et cetera, et cetera.
That's what I started to say. You'd be amazed at the people that break out like their measuring tape and measure my leader setup. My leaders are so simple though. Um, and
Right.
just
Yeah. You're like, I'm fishing straight leader. They're like, what?
yeah,
How are
I
you
just
turning
kind
that
of
thing over? Like,
that's people ask me that, and I'm like, dude, start just wham, wham. I mean, I throw full sink lines, and that's what I tell people. It's funny the people that will book and say, "Oh, I'm a really good fly fisherman," and once you start throwing a 8 weight with a sinking line for once you get
a
4 hours
day.
in,
Yeah.
you're like, I'm not as good as I. It's just hard on your body.
Especially if you are not leveraging the rod. If you're one of those, my elbow's way out to the side, I'm really cranking, all this body
Right,
movement. 4 hours,
right,
you're like fumbling, right?
right.
And that's typically what I do when I go out like to the white or something. I'm like out there like
I'm
muscling it
kicking.
along, and then all of a sudden you start to get tired and you start to bring your elbow in, and you start letting it do the rod cast, and you're like, oh my god, what have I been doing? And we need to take into consideration. I want to give everybody this tip. A lot of times when you're fly casting, you cast to the distance, you shadow cast to the distance of the cast, and then you let it fall. Stop doing that. Start shooting your line. Understand how to shoot your line 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. You will start leveraging the kinetic energy in your rod to shoot that line.
Correct. Well, and like I chicken wing, so like I'm like
Yeah.
you, like I chicken wing it, but my if you load the rod properly with your double haul, even if you're chicken winging it, and that's
Oh, it's
like a
so much
lot of
easier. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of people ask me, they're like, "Why do you?" I fish expensive rods, but it's the weight. So like I I race
Mm-hmm.
motorcycles, both my shoulders are hurt, and Sage Payload is an amazing rod, but it's heavy. So I'm a Douglas pro. I throw the
Mm-hmm.
Sky G all day long. It's
Sky
like
G is a great rod.
3.4 ounces, dude. That thing is wicked. It's very the responsiveness of it when you hook up on a fish. Um, I like it. And Douglas, like Alex, the owner's wife, she will
David's wife. Yep.
yes, she will bend over backwards for me. I call them, and my pro guy Kevin Johnson.
Yep. Kevin's there. He's a sales manager, and Kevin's a good friend of mine as too.
Dude, you know Kevin?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, I
He's a good dude.
love Kevin, dude. He's my boy.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
supposed to
He's super cool.
come. Well, he's actually supposed to come this month. He was going to take a vacation. He was in Florida a couple weeks ago. He said he's going to come back down here. He's going to take a couple of days, and
Yeah.
I
That's
don't see
good.
how Kevin does it, man. He's got a lot on his plate.
He does. And I'll tell you, Douglas, they will be the first to let you know that they have made the rods better. And everybody kind of tells you that. But if you know old Douglas to new Douglas, you can really see that. The old Douglas rods, they were like broomsticks. And
Right.
they put so much work and effort into it to making this new series of rods that their inexpensive rods now cast better than their older rods.
So
They're,
their DXF, my
yeah,
backup guide Clay uses, man, that kid he's like 10, 15 foot in the backing. And
yeah,
so have you seen, I've not seen it, but they sent me and I talked to Alex about the DXF Gen 2 that's coming out.
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Alex says it's far superior than the DXF. And I'm just going to be honest, man, that DXF, you can cast it 100 foot like it's nothing. And
Yeah.
I think the only true difference between the DXF and the Sky G is the weight. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I prefer the lighter rod, and I like the look of the Sky G as opposed to.
Yeah.
But the
I
Sky,
my 9 weights is Sky G. That's what I cast for permit and tarpon, small tarpon.
and their
It's like my
warranty.
go-to saltwater rod. Their warranty's amazing. You
Oh,
just, hey, I broke my tip. Okay, here comes another one.
two
I mean,
days.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
two
pretty
days.
incredible.
There's rod tips setting at my door, so I definitely would never Douglas unless they shut down. I'll guide for them until till they shut doors.
we're heading down a rat hole of Douglas, and I appreciate the brand too. But let's get back on subject. I want to talk about one last subject, and that's um, conservation prevention. So on this last incident, as I understand it, and I don't know all the details. I wasn't there, but as I understand it, the fish was caught. The concern of a record being broken was taken. The fish was held in the net for quite a bit of while. It was then transferred into some type of holding device, a bucket or cooler or something with good water in it. But then it was driven to an area to get weighed. And as I understand it, the weighing station was a postal office.
Yes,
So I want you to think about that as a whole. Let's say I'm correct. And you're saying, yeah, that's relatively accurate. Is that correct?
that's relatively accurate.
Okay. I spent, let's say, 2 minutes in the net because it's going to take you at least 2 minutes to run to your truck, get the keys, pull it down, get something into a cooler, and get the cooler into the truck. 2 minutes is hyper conservative. It's probably more like 10 to 15 minutes. right?
I'm not.
I know
So,
you don't have to agree. I don't want to put you on the spot.
oh, I agree
Let's
with you
say that. Yeah.
120%. But so,
Now I put the cooler into the truck or car.
do you load your
Is
boat or
there
do
a
you reach?
bubbler in the cooler? Is someone staying with the boat? Is the boat attached? Yada yada yada. Okay, we have some unknowns.
And then,
But then you get into the car.
well, somebody's
The
got to hold
postal office,
20 to.
somebody has to hold the cooler, or it has to be strapped down or something. You got to
So, yeah.
drive conservatively so you're not sloshing it around.
Yep.
I don't
So,
know a boat ramp that has a postal office closer to 15 minutes. I
I'm
just
gonna
don't.
say
I
I'm
mean,
gonna say 20 plus. Either
okay,
way.
so 15 to 20 plus minutes there and back. That means that fish is in a cooler for 30, 45 minutes, an hour before it's reintroduced to water. If there's no bubbler, extreme consequences. If there is, there's still consequences. How many times have we been in a bass boat and you got bait fish in the well and there's a bubbler and it's flushing clean water all day from the same lake that those bait fish came from and they don't live? Okay.
Right.
So you're starting to introduce all these conservation issues and safety issues for the fish that I'm not happy with.
I
And I also agree, devil's advocate, if I was holding a record, I might try some of those things when I was younger. I wouldn't do it
see.
now. When I was a kid, I might have been so enamored, or when I was a novice angler, so enamored with the process that I could have been either A, talked into it, B, mentally talked into it by my own adrenaline, right?
Right.
Now I know I wouldn't do that thing. But let's say some people may run in that scenario. Here's what I'm asking everybody to do. And Jason, I want to know if you're on the same page. Here's the takeaway from today, guys. If you're thinking of setting IGFA records or any record in any case of time, take the few minutes to get yourselves acquainted to the rules and regulations, pre-build your leaders, take your measuring board with you, take your certified scale with you, whatever it is. Carry
Certified
those on all your trips.
certified measure too. It has to be
Certified
IGFA measure.
measure.
Yes.
Okay. Take those on your trips. Put them in your bag. That's, I'm going to say, a heavy 8 pounds. It's probably way
Yep.
less than that. But 8 pounds, let's assume it's 8 pounds. Dude, if I carried around 8 pounds every year for the rest of my life in a fly bag to ensure that I wasn't killing fish and I never used it, I would sleep like a freaking gem.
Yes. That's 120%. You're 120% right. Like so like you were saying, I had a 34-inch brown trout that would have probably broke a lot of records across the board. Um, you know, killing at this point in my life, um, it's satisfying to me to see that people message me on Instagram and they're like, "Look, this is the same fish," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, but it's bloody now and it's dead." Um,
Right. Right.
so and that's the thing of it. So catch and release on the big fish does work, and it's really the mortality rate of a bigger fish just because it's at the end of its life is
Mm-hmm.
higher. So I have photographic evidence of at least four 30 plus inch fish that I've caught. People have sent me on Instagram, and it's undisputable the same fish. And people are like, "Well, how do you know that?" Obviously, you're a fisherman. You
Yeah.
know their
Their
dots
patterns, their
are just like our
size, their
fingerprints.
jawline, whatever, something. Yeah, there's something distinctive.
Yes,
Yeah.
their patterns, their spots are all unique to them. So if you can find like three or four, it's you can pretty much tell 120 20%. So I feel good about that. But the state record cutthroat was actually pulled out of where we caught these records, and
Mm-hmm.
it's sad because the fish had to die because you have to take it unless you're dealing with IGFA. So the state records, there's no you have to have obviously a witness
Mm-hmm.
to verify the weight, as opposed to you just have IGFA certify your scale. It's witnessed, and it's only all your stuff's only certified for a specific amount of time. So, like,
Right.
people are probably asking, well, I keep dropping my scale, and it
Yeah.
goes. So, yes, you have to send everything so many months and have it recertified just to
Yep.
make sure that everything's accurate and it's done the best way that it can. So, yeah, I agree. I think that I hate to see any trophy fish killed. Hybrids, they're not going to reproduce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the brown trout, that's the gene pool of our river. So
Yes.
it's,
There's a longer
I
term
don't,
effect. There's a
yes,
longer
and
term
I
effect.
don't want to see any fish like they're again. If everybody killed every big fish that they caught, I would be out of money because that's
Mm-hmm.
my forte. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal a line from another guy. The fish are my business partners. I mean, I definitely
Yep.
do not keep fish.
Yeah.
So
So I want to drop back one more time. We've done this a lot today because this is a lot to cover. Important issue. Number one, the fish that was caught, amazing catch. The anglers, the guides involved, amazing job in that scenario. Did they make all the right decisions? In my opinion, no.
they did.
Did they make mistakes? Yes. Do we all make mistakes? Absolutely. So I really task everyone with taking this as a learning experience to set you up in the future. If you're going to
Correct.
follow those rules, know the rules in and out, have everything dialed in, be prepared for it. That's a huge prevention item. The
Right.
second thing is we're not all looking to set a record all the time, but we want some kind of proof, right?
Correct.
Here's some ways. I'm going to give you some tips. And Jason, maybe you fire one or two in there. One is just write down what your tippet was. Maybe save it. Two is measure your fish with a tape measure. And we all have cell phones. Take the photos,
Correct.
right? Take a couple photos of the fish, keep it in the water. Here's the third one. You don't have a tape measure? Use your rod. Put the butt end at the mouth and measure how far it goes down. Take the pictures. You can go back and measure that again, and you can get a pretty accurate measurement. Is it going to follow the rules? Absolutely not.
Nope.
Is it going to matter to you? I'm
That's all
almost
that matters.
swearing. I don't want to swear, but hell yeah, it's going to matter to you,
That's
right?
all.
It's also going to matter to you, the people that really matter to you. So
Right.
don't worry about the rest of it.
That's
And I'll
all
tell
that
you,
matters.
that's all that matters. And there's going to be so many people that you don't know that it's going to matter to,
Well,
right? And if that's what it's all about for you, all for it. You know what? When I was a
right.
kid and I fished, I wanted to catch the biggest catfish or, sunny of the day. That was like so important to me. Is it important to me now? No.
Right.
People change, etc. What's another one?
I mean, honestly, it's just like you said. At the end of the day, um, you know what the fish was. That's really all that matters. My first 30-inch brown, I made a huge mistake of putting it on Instagram and putting a 30-inch brown because the trolls, they're like, that's not a 30-inch brown. Well,
Yeah.
when we the next day put the picture of us setting that fish into the water, everybody was saying it was a 22-inch fish. I'm like, if that's a 22-inch fish,
Yeah.
then we're like midgets. Like, we're very small people.
Right,
Um,
right.
so, and that's at the end of the day, if you're going to get measurements, try to do it as least harmful to the fish, because people, again, I see all these people setting the fish on the ground. Please don't do that.
Yeah. No.
I mean, this,
Have it in the water. Shallow water is all you need. Slide
and
it in, slide it out.
and I do grip and grins all day long,
Yeah.
but it's funny because, rule of thumb, as soon as the fish is out of the water, hold your breath. You start feeling comfortable, most likely the fish is uncomfortable, and you just, you know,
Yeah.
it's just, there's so
Well,
much.
you're talking to a guy with one lung. I lost my lung
Oh,
to Hodgkin's disease. So when I catch a fish, I'm usually out of breath. The first thing I do is arrest the fish
right.
in the net. The second thing I do is just what you said. I try to pick them up, and I'm like, okay, you guys are ready. Everybody's ready. Everybody's in position. One, two, three.
Yes.
Click, click, click. Down into the water, and like, okay, who's gonna get the release? Because I
Right.
like a picture. I use them for social media. I'm not gonna lie, I do that, but I'm pretty darn careful with my fish. You know, I
Right.
want my
But,
fish wiggling a little bit in the net before I try and lift them. A lot
yes,
of people are the other way. And when you look at it the other way, if your fish isn't wiggling a little bit in the net, they're still exhausted. And you
exactly.
pointed out the age of the fish earlier. Let's use this
Yes.
example. You go into the backyard and you got to run a wheelbarrow across the yard full of bricks. Who's going to be more tired at the end of the day? The 19-year-old, the 30-year-old, the 40-year-old, the 60-year-old, or the 90-year-old? If
Yep.
they're all the same person, just different, times in their life. Age, it hurts when you're an older person. Like, you can't do things as well as you used to be able to do.
Correct.
And it takes a lot more effort. It takes more effort as a young kid too. That's why we take care of young fish too. So
Right.
same types of things. Like, let's just put things into perspective, guys. That's
Well,
it. That's all I'll
fishing,
say is put things into perspective. Think about it. Use some common sense, and keep your fish wet.
well, and fishing, if you really think about it, if you stand back, and I think that you should do everything you can during the process to save the fish. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, I mean, we're fishing. It's sort of cruel because
Yeah,
you're throwing a hook out and
but
something's trying to eat, and it ends up fighting for its
yeah.
life. And so you need to think about that. So, like you said, once you get it to the net, let it recuperate. Um, you
Thank you.
know, and
Thanks. This was fun, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Right?
yeah,
Hey, Mr. Fish. Like, do it again for somebody else. Do me a favor. You
yeah,
know.
catch
Yeah.
and release works. It truly does. And I was skeptical. Uh, me and my friend had this long talk about with the bigger fish, because they are at the end of their life, and
Mm-hmm.
we're catching them. But I I can think of 4 fish that I've caught that these anglers have caught, messaged me on Instagram, and there's no, it's the same stretch. So that's another thing that
Yeah.
surprised me, because this one caught a fish off the trophy section on the Watauga. I've got 2 fish caught off the Watauga, and they're in the trophy section, and there's no doubt about it. 120% is the same fish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they do stay relatively within a mile, I would say, of their territory.
Their territory. Yeah. Yeah. So let's drop the call here. I think this is a great place for us to part. I really appreciate your input on this. I know it's a sensitive issue because you're friends with these people that have been involved. So I appreciate your candidness in this. If you
Thank
guys
you.
want to learn more about IGFA, contact IGFA through their website. If you have questions for Jason or I, you can contact Jason at Flying Soho. That's Flying SOHO on Instagram. Or you can contact me on the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. That's at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast on Instagram. Or you can go to the website, www.ffipodcast.com. I really appreciate it again, Jason. It was great catching up with you. Those of you that are seeking IGFA records, read the rules, understand them, go from there.
Be
And all
prepared.
the best of luck. I
Yes,
hope you
sir.
break a record 10 times over.
Records
Because
are meant to be broken.
that's
Records
right.
are meant to be broken.
That's all right. Thanks, everyone. This is the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. We'll talk to you soon.